Dr. Saud Mohammed Alsati. We will start as soon as he joins us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Let me start the session. This is the final session of our 12th annual G20 conference. This is a session that everybody looks forward to because we look at what's happened to the Troika in the past, what's happening at the present, and what is likely to happen in the future. And I'm really grateful to the representatives from the Japanese embassy, from the Saudi embassy, and from the Italian embassy for joining us. The session is titled Views from the Past, Current, and Upcoming Presidencies of the G20. We have with us Mr. Shingo Miyamoto, who is Minister Economic and Development at the Embassy of Japan. We have from Saudi, His Excellency, Dr. Saud Mohammed Alsati. And from Italy, we have His Excellency, Mr. Vincenzo di Luca from the Italian Embassy in India, who's joined us. So, as I said, we will start from the past. We'll start with Japan, and then I'll go to Saudi Arabia, and then to Italy. Just a couple of words about the Japanese presidency. It was officially taken over for the first time in December 1, 2018, with a broad focus on global economy, trade and investment, innovation, environment and energy, employment, women empowerment, development and health, and particular priority was placed on economic growth and reduction of inequalities, quality infrastructure and health, SME financing, global issues such as climate change and ocean plastic waste, digital economy, and the challenges of an aging society. And of course, the outcomes, we are familiar with the outcomes of the Japanese presidency. One was the Osaka track, which was initiated and which initiated a new regime for global data governance. There was also an Osaka Blue Ocean vision that was conceived at the time of the Japanese presidency, and a sharp emphasis was placed on aging societies, unpaid care work, and quality infrastructure, something that we heard in the last session as well. And it is my privilege and honor to introduce to you Mr. Shingo Miyamoto, who will speak to us more about the Japanese presidency and what lessons we can derive, especially as we look at the road to the future. What are the lessons that we can derive? I'm not going to introduce each speaker too much and take time because all the CVs are all very well-known people and the CVs are available at our special website on ICRIER. So please do have a look at the curriculum vitae of the speakers. Mr. Miyamoto is Minister Economic and Development at the Embassy of Japan in India. After joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan in 1994, Mr. Miyamoto has held various positions, including head of political section at the Embassy of Japan in Indonesia and Counselor of Economic section at the Embassy of Japan in the United States of America. He's held very important posts and he's eminently qualified. And thank you so much, Mr. Miyamoto, for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajat Kathuria, Director and Chief Executive of ICRIER. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak at this auspicious forum today. His Excellency Dr. Saud Mohammed Alsati, esteemed Ambassador of Saudi Arabia, and also His Excellency Vincenzo de Luca. Thank you very much for being with me here today. I will use the time today that was given to me to sort of go over and give a brief overview of Japan's presidency of the G20 last year. But I would also like to take my liberty to discuss about what we expect of the next G20 meeting. So Japan has been participating in the discussion in the G20 since its creation in 1999. And last year, we were given the fortunate opportunity to serve as the G20 chair. And with the cooperation of all G20 partners, we were able to put together the Osaka Leaders Declaration that expressed the determination of the G20 to tackle major economic issues that the world is faced with. We continue to believe that the leaders, what the leaders decided last year is still relevant in today's world. And we wish to see continuity in the work of the G20 as a whole. So today, I would like to take the liberty of using the time that's given to me to kind of briefly go over them. And in doing so, I will try to touch upon some items that Japan attaches particular importance to. But at the same time, I must say that the world has gone through immense changes after the G20 meetings last year, as you all know what I'm talking about. Needless to say, this has been kind of forced upon us by the COVID-19 pandemic that we are all having to go through right now. So please allow me as well, in addition to just going over what Japan did as the G20 president, but to touch upon the role that the G20 is expected to play going forward in order to address the challenges that the world economy is faced with under the current situation. So first, let me touch upon, I will limit myself to 5 main outcomes of the Osaka summit in the interest of time. And the first is trade and investment. So in the area of trade and investment, the leaders agreed to strive to realize a free, fair, non-discriminatory, and transparent, predictable, and stable trade and investment environment, and to keep our markets open, more importantly. The leaders reaffirmed their support for the necessary reform of the WTO to improve its functions. We attach an immense amount of importance to this. And they also noted that action is necessary regarding the functioning of the dispute settlement system. The leaders also recognized that the complementary roles of bilateral and regional FTAs that they are WTO consistent. And the leaders pledged to work to ensure a level playing field to foster an enabling business environment. And the next area that I wish to touch upon is quality infrastructure investment, which was already introduced. Japan attaches a great amount of importance to this issue because we feel that it is an important area that we must work on to ensure that the world continues to achieve high quality growth in the future, benefiting everyone living on this earth, actually. So in Osaka, the leaders endorsed the G20 principles for quality infrastructure investment. And this principle includes 6 principles, which I will just name them, just to remind yourselves of them. These are maximizing the positive impact of infrastructure to achieve sustainable growth and development. Next one being raising economic efficiency in view of life cycle cost. And then the third is integrating environmental considerations in infrastructure investments. And the fourth is building resilience against natural disasters and other risks. And the fifth is integrating social considerations in infrastructure improvement. And the last is strengthening infrastructure governance. So this quality infrastructure development is an essential part of the G20's ongoing efforts to close the infrastructure gap. we firmly believe that it is necessary to focus not only on the quantity of infrastructure, but also the quality of it when we work to meet the ever-expanding demand for infrastructure needs of the world. This is important to ensure an inclusive and sustainable development of the developing world. So the idea of focusing on lifetime cost rather than the cost at time of construction, and the disaster resilience of infrastructure, and paying attention to environmental and social sustainability in the principles I just outlined, all come from such basic thinking. And I believe that the line of thought is completely shared by India, being the country that has established and is now taking the lead in the work in the CDRI. So high quality infrastructure is more economical if you look at its entire life cycle, and it has far-reaching positive impact on the environment and society as a whole. So it will have a positive impact on the economy as a whole as well. This is why Japan put this idea forward as a priority area to try to maximize the growth potential of the global economy. And we hope to see this idea carried forward in the future meetings of the G20 as well. Next area is innovation. Innovation is an important driver for human economic growth. And the leaders in Osaka shared the notion of a human-centered future society, which is being promoted by Japan in its policy of Society 5.0. The leaders also announced the DFFT, which stands for Data Free Flow with Trust, which will harness the opportunities of the digital economy. Leaders committed to a human-centered approach to AI and welcomed the non-binding G20 AI principles. And the leaders also reaffirmed the importance of bridging the digital divide and fostering the adoption of a digitalization among MSMEs. The leaders affirmed the need to further work on urgent challenges like security in the digital economy, along with expanding emerging technologies, including IoT. I would also just like to ask for some time to explain Japan's thought on the data free flow with trust, DFFT. DFFT aims to achieve a free international flow of data that would be useful in providing solutions to businesses and social issues and challenges, while duly securing the trust that is required for ensuring privacy, security, and protection of intellectual property rights. In the Osaka summit, the Osaka track was launched for the promotion of rulemaking with a view to expanding the international web of data sharing. I know that the issue of data sharing across international borders is a sensitive issue for many countries. Japan itself has domestic laws prohibiting the sharing of certain categories of data. But in order to maximize the potential of the rapid expansion of digitalization that we are experiencing now, there is a definite need to come up to speed in the rulemaking in this field. So we do look forward to further progress in this field in future meetings of the G20. Moving on to the third pillar, global finance. In Osaka, leaders reiterated the importance to improve debt transparency and secure debt sustainability. The leaders welcomed India's association voluntarily with the Paris Club to cooperate in this work on a case-by-case basis. The leaders also welcomed the recent progress in addressing the tax challenges arising from digitalization and endorsed the ambitious work program, which consists of a two-pillar approach developed by the inclusive framework of BEPS. Moving on to the fourth pillar, global health, which is becoming increasingly more relevant in today's world. Health is a prerequisite for sustainable and inclusive economic growth. Leaders in this area recalled their commitment to moving forward moving towards achieving universal health coverage. The leaders recognized the importance of sustainable financing for health. They call for greater collaboration between health and finance authorities. And in the G20 joint session of finance and health ministers, in accordance with the G20 shared understanding on the importance of universal health coverage financing in developing countries. And moving on to the last pillar of the results coming from Osaka that I will go over. This is climate change, energy, and the environment. In this field, the leaders agreed that a paradigm shift is needed where the vicious cycle of environment and growth is accelerated through innovations. Oh, sorry, virtuous cycle. Please allow me to correct myself. The leaders acknowledged the importance of energy transitions that realize the 3E plus S, which is energy security, economic efficiency, and environment plus safety. The leaders also acknowledged the G20 Japanese Presidency's initiative called Research and Development 20 for energy technologies. Furthermore, the leaders shared the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision, which was already introduced, aiming to reduce additional pollution by marine plastic litter to 0 by 2050. Now, I'm moving on to the second part of my statement. Please allow me to speak a little bit about some of the things that I hope that we will be able to address in the upcoming G20 summit under the chairmanship of our esteemed colleagues from Saudi Arabia. First and foremost is how we tackle the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects of it on our economy. It is clear that we live in an entirely different world from the time of the Japanese presidency, because when we hosted that meeting, there was no COVID. And now it seems that COVID is having an impact on almost everything we do. So we will have to work together to find a way forward in the current situation. This means that we have to ensure continuity with what has been decided in the past, but then we also need to find a way where these things can be realized under the current situation. And this also means that the Saudi presidency of the G20 this year is of special importance, something that no one else has had to deal with before. And we need to work together to make sure that we have good results. I will not go over what the corona pandemic is doing to us and the impact it has caused. But clearly, I think one of the most important endeavors moving forward is to make sure that we have fair access to vaccines throughout the world. Japan has been working with developing countries with vulnerable health systems, trying to help them in this area. And we view that vaccines are global public goods. So we are working with organizations like Gavi to make sure that everyone has access to the necessary vaccines. So we look forward to working within the framework of the G20 to make sure that we make good progress in this area. And the second thing is, what do we do about the post-COVID international order? We live in a globalizing world, but we now know that we have to deal with the risks posed by COVID-19. And how do we ensure that we have the kind of movement of people and goods that we had before COVID? How do we maintain and protect the international trading system? And how do we make sure that it develops into a better one in the future? How do we make sure that we have free flow of data? And what kind of rules do we make under the current situation, where we increasingly are relying on this type of intercourse using IT to make things done? So we do look forward to participating and playing an active and a positive role in the creation of the international order in the post-COVID world. We look forward to working with all our G20 partners in this endeavor. Leaving no one behind is a vision that forms the basis of this SDGs. And I think it still continues to be a major guiding principle that serves as sort of like a lighthouse in giving us direction when we have to design the post-COVID societies. In relation to this, Japan has always based its activities on the concept of human security. We have been promoting this idea, and we think that it lines up nicely with this idea of the SDGs. This year is the first year of the decade of action towards the achievement of the SDGs. And we continue to have the desire to work with the entire international community in the achievement of the SDGs. So we hope that in the discussions in the G20 this year as well, this angle will be continued to be maintained. So we try to focus our discussions on how we can take steps to achieve the SDG goals. And that basically brings me to the conclusion of my statement. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And we hope that Japan's experiences in the G20 can serve as, a very useful food for thought in all of us working together to come up with how we deal with the situation that we're faced with today. And Japan stands ready to do everything it can to cooperate with the Saudi presidency to make this year's G20 a huge success. Thank you very much for this opportunity again. And I look forward to hearing from the others to make this forum into a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miyamoto, for those very rich remarks and telling us what Japan has done during its presidency and what the outcomes have been. And I think it's natural for Japan and for the rest of the world and for the G20 process itself to expect that there is some sort of continuity in the process as we move from one presidency to another. Because these goals and these objectives have been framed not only looking at individual countries, but they have been framed looking at the global situation. And I think, as you rightly said, Saudi Arabia assumed the presidency in December 2019, and it probably did not have an idea of what was to follow. And this has been a complete shock for them, unexpected shock. And I think they've dealt with it rather well. And this is what our G20 Sherpa at the inaugural session, Mr. Suresh Prabhu, had also said and commended the G20 counterpart from Saudi Arabia for the role that they have played in the G20 process so far, and also wish them all the best for the presidential summit that is coming up in November. So the focus of the presidency in Saudi Arabia has been specifically on making or realizing opportunities of the 21st century for all. So it's been a sort of inclusive agenda, empowering people, empowering women, empowering the young people, safeguarding the planet, and shaping new frontiers through innovation and technological advancement. So I think there is continuity between what Japan did and what Saudi Arabia is doing. And to tell us more about what Saudi Arabia is doing and what the achievements have been, it is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce to you His Excellency, Dr. Saud Mohammed Alsati, who is the ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to India. He holds this position since January 2012. He was born in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and Dr. Alsati holds a PhD degree in international politics from the University of Southern California, Los Angeles. He got this in 1994. He has a bachelor's degree from the same university. as well, sorry, he has a master's degree from the same university and a bachelor's degree in political science from King Abdul Aziz University, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Dr. Alsati joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as attaché in the year 1989. As I said, it's my absolute delight and pleasure to offer you Dr. Alsati. Over to you.
Thank you. Dr. Rajat, Kathuria, thank you very much for your nice introduction. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Shingo Miyamoto, our colleague from the Embassy of Japan, and also His Excellency Ambassador Vincenzo, Ambassador of Italy, and the distinguished participant. I want again to thank ICRIER for inviting me to share my thoughts on Saudi Arabia's G20 presidency for 2020. And as you rightly said, that when we assumed the presidency early to 2000 or in December 2019, the focus of the agenda and preparation were different. We were actually so proud and looking forward to showcase the changes that are taking place in Saudi Arabia and the transformation in so many areas, whether in the economy, culture, reforms, and so on. However, COVID-19 changed the focus. I had the pleasure actually of participating at least for 3 times in your esteemed organization on discussions on G20, past, current, and future. And I found them very, very enjoyable. And I still remember that the main focus or conclusions were that building consensus building was essential actually for the work of G20, and also international coordination importance to address and face common challenges, and especially to issues of cross-bordering natures, which I think COVID-19 now proved once again that the world is so small and so interdependent in many ways. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia assumed the G20 presidency on December 1st, 2019, with 3 aims: empowering people, safeguarding the planet, and shaping new frontiers. And these 3 aims formed our vision for G20, known as realizing opportunities for the 21st century for all. It is indeed a privilege for us in Saudi Arabia to host the summit. COVID-19 has been an unprecedented challenge for all of us and has shown the need for working together to face such a challenge. The global economy suffered a setback due to the pandemic, from health system to interruption of supply chains. We were going through a testing time as we face such unusual disruption. The need of the hour was to build a coordinated response and develop a strong foundation to combat the existing effects and safeguard our future. With this aim, we as the current president of the G20, in coordination with member countries and international organizations, implemented a variety of harmonized responses. Under the leadership of Saudi Arabia, the extraordinary G20 Leaders Summit was convened in March 2020. The member countries committed to take all necessary health measures and sought to ensure adequate financing to contain the pandemic and protect people, especially the most vulnerable. The G20 has taken extraordinary measures to restart global growth and prioritize focus on public health. This summit was instrumental indeed in cementing the global cooperation to combat the pandemic. Virtual conferences of G20 ministerial and working groups have been held at regular intervals, resulting in an unequivocal commitment from the G20 members to deal with the pandemic through global cooperation and resilient policy making. The second virtual meeting of G20 finance ministers and central bank governors led to a landmark outcome. In that meeting, G20 countries agreed to suspend debt service payments for the world's poorest countries through the end of the year. During the third meeting of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors, it was noted that this landmark initiative had benefited 42 countries, amounting to an estimated debt of $5.3 million to be deferred. Apart from the above, various other meetings have been conducted between the concerned ministers on the key topics of energy, education, digital economy, foreign policy matters, and labor and employment, among others. The G20 Sherpas have been instrumental in assessing the commitments made by the leaders for the member countries and have expressed satisfaction on the progress so far. The Kingdom has also pledged $500 million to relevant international organizations to support global efforts in combating the COVID-19 pandemic, and this pledge supports emergency and preparedness response, developing and deploying new diagnostics and vaccines, addressing the needs for international surveillance and coordination, and ensuring sufficient supplies of protective equipment for professionals. Along with this, the Saudi G20 presidency has welcomed the launch of Access to COVID-19 Tools, ACT Accelerator, a landmark global and timely collaboration for the accelerated development, production, and an equitable access to new COVID-19 tools. The ACT Accelerator initiative will be a global platform for action to enhance connections and leverage interdependencies for collective partnership, problem solving, mobilizing, and guiding investment. The Kingdom has also been discussing important issues through various engagement groups. These groups are working with all the member countries to develop policy recommendations that are formally submitted to G20 leaders for consideration. They are namely B20, Y20, L20, T20, C20, W20, and S20, and finally U20. The unprecedented challenge of COVID-19 also has shown the need for a coordinated global response to global challenges, building consensus, and employing effective communication and innovative solutions, and also has proven to be instrumental in dealing with crises of a global scale. Dear friends, Saudi Arabia and India have cooperated as strategic partners during the COVID-19 pandemic. India facilitated the travel of hundreds of healthcare professionals to Saudi Arabia. Supply chains between the two countries have been maintained, and more, our trade commitments are also on track, and we foresee a bright future for our bilateral trade. Our strategic partnership will certainly grow stronger in the days to come. We look forward to working closely with Italy and India and other G20 partners to ensure that we realize opportunities of the 21st century for all. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Alsati, for telling us what Saudi Arabia is doing. And let me, before I invite the Italian ambassador, let me congratulate you for what Saudi Arabia has done. And as you mentioned, the Kingdom has pledged United States dollars 500 million to support global efforts in combating the pandemic. And you've had so many meetings and held so many engagement group meetings, as you said. And under the Saudi presidency, there is a recognized need to improve the quality of the global health systems and to ensure that vaccine, as Mr. Miyamoto is also saying, that vaccines are available to everybody, especially to the underprivileged. I'm sure that some of these issues will already be discussed or already have been discussed within the forthcoming Italian presidency. The Italian presidency, as public reports say, has already committed to continue attention on issues such as international trade, climate change, and the overarching priority of population, planet, and prosperity. The Italian presidency has an important role to play in outlining a path towards sustainable recovery. Gender equality and sustainable development across Africa will also perhaps be at the center of the Italian presidency. But I won't steal the thunder. I would let His Excellency, Ambassador Vincenzo di Luca, to tell us more about what to expect from the Italian presidency and what they are doing, and to say that India looks forward to joining the Troika later in the year. Ambassador Di Luca has been a career diplomat since 1989 and has been given several important assignments at the Foreign Ministry and at diplomatic representations at Khartoum, Tunis, and Paris as the permanent representative in the OECD, and has also held a position in Shanghai. He has a long-standing expertise in internationalization of the economic systems of the public and private sector, both in central offices in the capacity of diplomatic advisor to the Ministry of Industry, Transport and Economic Development, as well as in large corporations. So he has both private and public sector experiences. During the past few years, he has played a relevant role in the organization of Expo Milano 2015 as president of the Foreign Ministry's task force. It is my absolute delight and pleasure and honor to introduce to you Ambassador Di Luca and invite him for his remarks. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kathuria, for your presentation and also for inviting us to this very, very interesting webinar. And as well, I want to thank His Excellency Dr. Saud Mohammed Alsati, Ambassador of Saudi Arabia in India, and our colleague, Minister Miyamoto from the Japanese Embassy. I think it's very interesting to have three presidencies together, also to underline the importance to have continuity in the G20 agenda. But unfortunately, this year we have also some new shock, as you rightly said, Mr. Kathuria, the shock coming from COVID-19 that the Saudi Arabia presidency, with a strong commitment, tackled during 2020. But I think, unfortunately, also 2021 will be still affected by this shock, COVID-19. And of course, we will have a lot of continuity with the previous agenda, but also we have to take into account the present challenge and the challenge for the coming years. We have also to consider that after Italy will be India to have the chair, the chair of the G20. So we have also to look in the medium term, which is the evolution of the agenda of G20. I see three major challenges. Of course, first of all, COVID pandemics, but also the economic impact of COVID-19, and also the increase in the inequalities coming from this crisis. Third point is still climate change. And I want also to tell you that climate change will be also an important challenge for Italy, because not only we will chair G20, but we will be also co-chair of COP26 in the same year. So it's a double challenge for us. And we have to also consider the global landscape today, more and more characterized by a multipolar world, as Minister Jaishankar underlined in his last book, The Indian Way. Yes, we are in a multipolar order, and we have to be able to promote and further enhance an effective multilateralism is the only way forward we need to follow. As incoming G20 presidency, we are aware of the responsibility that Italy will have next year in leading multilateral efforts, because G20 is a very important forum for discussing the future of multilateralism in the world. This is the moment to lead the way from fragility towards new vitality. For this reason, the Italian G20 presidency is pleased to organize a global health summit, because health and pandemic will be the priority also next year. We will organize this summit in Italy next year in strict coordination also with European Commission. You know that European Union has adopted a very strong policy and a green recovery plan, EU Next Generation, and also a plan to promote projects for global health. While following up on promoting global health as a global public good, yes, I agree with the Japanese colleague and the ambassador from Saudi Arabia, global public health is a global public good, vaccine is a global public good. We have to be very focused on this principle. We need to look beyond the immediate emergency and focus on our effort for fostering an inclusive, sustainable, and resilient recovery. If the international community will not acknowledge that our future is at stake, global environment emergencies such as climate change and biodiversity loss might bring about social and economic distress far larger than the caused by COVID-19. We cannot waste the opportunity that lies in this crisis. We need to build back better and design economic recovery package accordingly. So there is a challenge for health policy. There is a change for a global coordination for a global economic recovery, inclusive recovery. This means doing more than getting economies at livelihood quickly back on their feet. Recovery policy also need to trigger investment and behavioral change that will reduce the likelihood of future shock and increase the resilience of our society to them when they happen. Central to this approach is a focus on well-being and inclusiveness, because, as I said before, social and economic inequality is increasing all over the world. You have to tackle with an inclusiveness approach. Our agenda will reach, as rightly said by our director Kathuria, on 3P: people, planet, prosperity. This means taking care of people and the planet in a holistic fashion, inclusive and people-centered policies, the protection of environment, and the leveraging of digital revolution, as mentioned by our Japanese colleague, will be the highlights of our agenda. Developing a safer and more sustainable world requires restoring the balance between people and nature. As the world continues to face global emission and temperature rise at an alarming rate, we will spare no efforts to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change. To this aim, we will leverage the synergy with COP26 that Italy, as I told you before, we co-chair with the United Kingdom. Underlying the crucial role of the climate energy nexus, energy transition will be key to our vision. In this spirit, the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda will be fundamental pillars of our action. And I want also to inform you that Italy is going to finalize its membership to International Solar Alliance promoted by the Indian government. We firmly believe that only by applying a climate, resilience, and sustainability lens to our long-term economic policy could we create new jobs, boost economic growth, protect the environment, and get better prepared for future shock. To do so, we agree that the synergy between government and private sector and civil society is not only beneficial, but it's necessary. In particular, we share the idea that the private sector can support the COVID-19 recovery by shifting finance and business models into low carbon and resilient investment that maximize overall environmental and social benefits. And this is also important, the work done by the Japanese presidency about quality of infrastructure. Quality of infrastructure means also environmentally friendly infrastructure. Trade, as said by Ambassador Alsati and also by the previous speakers, is a pillar of the global economy and prosperity. It's imperative that the G20 continues efforts to spur trade recovery and strengthen the WTO and as a cornerstone of the multilateral trading system. Following up on the outcome of the Saudi presidency, we will deepen and broaden the discussion on the WTO reform. I know that also the Indian government is very much interested in this agenda, including on topics such as trade sustainability. We will also focus on how to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise to penetrate international markets and reap the benefits of globalization. Moreover, the resilience of global supply chain, that is a further importance after COVID crisis, digitalization also more and more important after this shock, and investment will continue to be priority issue for G20 agenda. In tackling all these challenges, we will focus on the impact of the crisis on the most vulnerable countries, above all in the African continent. Africa has to remain a priority for G20. In this spirit, Italy joined the G20 Debt Service Suspension Initiative and is in favor of its extension next year. We also look forward to further initiatives which can ensure growth and sustainability. And of course, taking into account the achievement of the SDGs that remain an important priority for the Italian government. Moreover, we believe that financing for development and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda are paramount to promote a sustainable future beyond COVID-19. We must strengthen all our financing tools, maximize their impact, ensure that our investment policies leave no one behind. Building a better future is possible only if we work together, united in a global community of intent, forged on a spirit of cooperation and solidarity. We need more cooperation and solidarity after COVID. And also, as we have tasted over the last few months, multilateralism is not a form of a cooperative approach. It's the only choice we have in front of us. We have no alternative to multilateralism to have a better governance of the world. As we prepare to take over as G20 presidency, we stress the need for a renewed commitment to a rule-based international order with United Nations at its center. International organizations, multilateral fora have a key role to provide impetus to international cooperation. And I think G20 can give an important contribution to this agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Luca, for those remarks. And indeed, when I listen to all three remarks from Japan, Saudi Arabia, and Italy, already I begin to think that there is so much of continuity in the process of G20. And as everybody has rightly said, G20 is an international forum that can build cooperation, and that it is so important that we focus on reviving the multilateral system. The Japanese have said this, the Saudis are emphasizing this, and as you say, Ambassador, Italy will also emphasize, trying to revive the multilateral order, because even India thinks that reviving multilateral order is the way forward, and it has to be in a cooperative manner. Bilateralism actually is not inclusive, and it actually harms the less influential and the less powerful countries, and multilateralism is much more inclusive. And hopefully the results of the American elections, as they come out, hopefully there will be a change in the stance that they take towards multilateralism, as well as reviving of the dispute settlement process that is at the heart of reviving multilateralism in the WTO. I also think that the COVID pandemic has sort of created a shock, but it has also created, as you say, an opportunity to do things right, to mend the things that we haven't been doing so well. And it therefore is an opportunity for reform, and also provides an opportunity for us to all come together. Vaccine is going to be a global public good. And I hope that all of us are able to work together towards seeing that once it is ready, once it is produced, it is distributed in an equitable way. Because as somebody said in one of our global health sessions that we had in the conference, that global health is as strong as the weakest link in the chain. And if everybody is not protected, if everybody is not free, then nobody is free. And therefore it is important that the vaccine is available to everybody. Thank you all so much. And I think there are some comments coming in, but they're all thanking you for spending time and taking time for sharing your thoughts with us. But Your Excellencies, if you could bear with me for a few minutes, I will try and summarize and prepare the vote of thanks for this conference as we bring down the curtain on ICRIER's 12th annual G20 conference, which, as Ambassador Alsati said, was to try and protect human lives and restore economic stability and try to build consensus. And as we bring the curtain down on the 12th G20 conference in India, God willing, inshallah, we will continue to hold these conferences in ICRIER until at least the G20 presidency of India, if not beyond. I must admit that we in ICRIER were skeptical about organizing this event virtually, and that we had previous benchmarks as guidance because our previous conferences had gone really well. So we were very skeptical and how we would pull this off. The worry was natural because we did really well in our past conferences and we thought we might not be able to meet those standards. And surpassing those standards never actually crossed our mind. But it is with great pride and humility that I must say that this has been one of our most successful conferences. And it is thanks to all of you. More than 800 people registered and attended various sessions. And we had an international cast of very formidable speakers, just like yourselves, that were complemented by a host of Indian speakers who were all very good as well. All the sessions that we have had in this conference will be available on ICRIER's website. And I'm sure it will be worthwhile to all of you and all the panelists and all the attendees to actually go back and listen and reflect on those sessions in leisure, because I think there was some remarkable content that was delivered in those sessions. I will now attempt a very quick summary, but I will not take too much time. I will attempt a very quick summary, but I must also say that the summary will be incomplete, it will be imperfect, and it will be inadequate, and it will not do justice to the quality that was presented. And it is not a substitute for going and listening to those sessions on your own. And I really encourage all of you to please listen to the remarkable content that has been produced in this conference. The conference was opened by Mr. Pramod Bhasin, who is our chairman, who remembered our former chairperson, Dr. Ishar Judge Ahluwalia, as so many others did during the conference. They recalled her charisma, her fantastic ability to do research, and her clear and crisp thinking. There was nothing that could stand in her path, and once she got going, she really achieved outcomes. And wherever we are in ICRIER today, we owe a lot to her and we will miss her enormously. Pramod spoke about the need for greater coordination, as all of you have, in the G20 and amongst the members, and to resist the temptation for members to look inwards. This was a recurrent theme in all the sessions. We have to resist the temptation to become protectionist, to look inwards. We must be encouraged to make changes that we need to achieve the goals of sustainability, because we are already seeing the impacts in the bushfires in Australia, in the forest fires in California, in the fires in Amazon. So we must stop the spread of climate change. We must try and put a stop, mitigate and adapt as much as possible. All countries have suffered, including India, who continues to suffer, especially due to many catastrophes. And business, Mr. Pramod Bhasin emphasized, can do a lot more, can introspect a lot more on whether they are meeting the environmental standards. So he himself is an entrepreneur, and he looks within, and he says that business can actually do a lot more to promote environmental sustainability. And he asks the question, a rhetorical question, of course, are we doing enough as entrepreneurs? Are we doing enough as business? The inaugural address was given by Shri Suresh Prabhu, our G20 Sherpa, and he emphasized, he complimented the Saudi presidency on what it has achieved. He complimented His Excellency Dr. Fahad Al-Mubarak on what has been achieved as a part of the Saudi presidency. And he also emphasized that we must build future, we must build back better, but we also must have human-centric development. And I think that was the narrative, that was the message of his address, that it has to be human-centric development, and we have to eschew thinking constantly about GDP numbers. GDP is necessary, but it is not sufficient to achieve human-centric development. He also compared global value chains to the arteries to the heart. He said global value chains have become so integral, so trying to make them sort of protectionist or trying to diversify away forcibly may not be the right way to go, because global value chains have become an integral part. They are inevitable. Yes, they need to be made more resilient, but also they have to be done in a manner such that we are able to create jobs and not disrupt the global trading system too much. The address by Dr. Fahad Ul-Mubarak, the G20 Sherpa, emphasized again collaboration. He said, he made a statement, and I would like to quote, he said, "We will win if we work together." And I think that is a very important message that was delivered by him. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the Saudi presidency disproportionately, has also demonstrated, according to him, the fact that we are very, very interrelated. Trade of goods and services, capital, data flows, and the interconnectedness and interdependence are clearly reflected in capital and data flows. No country can solve these problems on its own. We have to work together, and G20 is an institutional approach that permits us to work together. The G20 presidency, he said, has developed this year's agenda with a forward-looking lens, focusing on addressing global challenges, as I said, realizing opportunities of the 21st century for all. The presidency has specifically worked on empowering people, especially women, young people, safeguarding the planet, and shaping new frontiers through innovation and technological advancement. We then had our Secretary Economic Relations, Sri Rahul Chhabra, who spoke on the need to build an international consensus amongst countries and mitigating the short and long-term impacts. He spoke about mobilizing resources and sharing technologies and expertise amongst all countries. And then we had a technical session on the first technical session on evaluating global financial architecture and regulatory practices, progress, and the way forward. As I said, the session will be available, and I encourage all of you to have a look at the content of the session and hear the content of the session. And they said something very important, which is very obvious, but which is also very important, which is this was a crisis that was imposed on the real sector. Unlike 2008, which was a crisis that emanated in the banking and the financial system. This was a crisis that has emanated in the real sector. This has emanated in the productive and the real sector. And the financial sector has been much more resilient this time. The policy harmonization that was achieved as a result of the financial crisis of 2008 provides a lesson on how policy harmonization should also be achieved now. Even though the crisis has emanated in the real sector. But there are problems in achieving this harmonization, the session emphasized, and some of the problems are, of course, the fact that there is a confrontation between the two large economic powers of our world, but they emphasize that it is important to achieve this harmonization. G20 has been successful in the finance track, but its ability to be successful now in the other tracks when there is a shock in the real sector, because this shock will be prolonged and this will be long-standing, the ability of G20 to address this shock will be tested in not only the future presidencies, but I think in the future in general as well. The session also emphasized the need for trying to revive global coordination through what is called the mutual access protocol to try and get it back on track. And that was important. Regulation has a big role to play because we have to regulate in a manner that eschews moral hazard. You want to revive firms, you want to revive small and medium enterprises, and you have to do them in a macro-prudential manner, because if firms go bankrupt, and good firms go bankrupt or viable firms go bankrupt, they are going to affect the financial sector as well. And then that will become a problem for the global economy. We will have a real shock, and then which will spread to the banking sector as well. And one way to prevent that is to try and ensure through the loan restructuring mechanism, through a liquidity mechanism, through a credit risk mechanism, that the small and medium enterprises, the viable firms, remain viable and solvent. I think this was a very powerful session, and I hope that all of you will see it. Then we had a session on global trade and investment, which was also an extremely important session, and it talked about, as the Ambassador Luca also emphasized, as Mr. Shimoda also emphasized, the need to revive multilateralism as a way forward. Unfortunately, multilateralism has sort of become a victim of politics, but we need to revive multilateralism. And it spoke of the institutional and policy challenges. Of course, trade has changed. There is digitization, there is e-commerce, there's a complex relationship between manufacturing and services. There's a complex relationship between trade and environment. And of course, there is a crisis in the dispute settlement mechanism. Despite all of this, there was optimism on reviving multilateralism and ensuring that WTO can then become what the role it can play, that it has always played in the global trading system. In the global health concerns and international cooperation and the role of technology, the session pointed to the political nature of the global health security. Global health session, as I just said a little while ago, emphasized that the global health security is as strong as its weakest link. No one is safe until everyone is safe. And there is a weak link today in the world, and the weak link, the session emphasized, was politics. And along with the pandemic, there is also an infodemic. There is a lot of misinformation that is out there, and this needs to be curtailed. The session spoke of the need for evidence and an integrated approach for global health systems, and looked at an integrated approach for managing global health through better technology and through also improved food systems. I think there was a lot of emphasis on improving the food systems. The lack of social protection and the closing of civic spaces means that the poor and the marginalized, especially women, are suffering the most as a result of the pandemic and are already suffering the most as a result of climate change. And the session concluded by saying that we cannot risk a bidding war for the vaccine as all of you have said on this panel, vaccine is a global public good. We cannot afford that there is a bidding war for the vaccine. And I think countries like India, which are going to be producers of the vaccine whenever it comes out, are going to be important, will have an important role to play, not only in production, but I think also in distribution. Our annual G20 address was given by Raghuram Rajan, and I think it was a fascinating address. And he spoke of the two-paced recovery that we are seeing not only in India, but in the world. Manufacturing is recovering faster than services, but services is lagging. And given that the pandemic has affected the social sector, the service sector much more, we will have to see how this plays out. But the two-paced recovery is something that we are seeing across the world. Raghu also emphasized the need to fix the supply side, as the other session on the global financial system has suggested. We need to fix the supply side, because if you don't fix the supply side, then you will have stressed assets, you will have stranded assets in the future, and you don't want that to happen. But at the same time, you don't want zombie firms to be saved. You want good, viable firms to be saved, and therefore an institutional mechanism that allows you to save the good firms is very, very important. He also focused that the SMEs are important to save because they provide employment. So there was a focus on repair, there was a focus on resilience, and there was a focus on building that better so that we are able to then, look at the recovery in a positive way. He said, he emphasized this in response to many questions, that it is important to address the short term, because if we don't address the short term, we don't address the firms that are in distress, then we will not be able to address the long term. So there is an inextricable relationship between what we do now and what we will be able to do in the future. And then there was a session this morning on sustainability and the Sustainable Development Agenda. And I think that was also a very important session. And it emphasized the fact that all of you have been emphasizing, the Japanese presidency has been emphasizing, the Saudis and the Italians have been saying, on the need to build quality infrastructure. And we have to get this out of our mind, that growth and sustainability are at conflict with each other. Now that we have the pandemic, we have to grow in a manner that is sustainable. It is not in conflict with each other. That was the emphasis of that session, that growth and sustainability can and have to go together. And there was also an emphasis of building back better. There's an emphasis on sustainability, on building quality infrastructure, and building global coalitions, and using instruments such as phasing out of subsidies, using instruments of carbon pricing to achieve those objectives. There was also talk of resilient infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure, and quality infrastructure. And it is important to build coalitions. And this was our last sessions, and I don't need to summarize that, because three of you eminent people have spoken so well about what the world needs to do. And I hope we are able to implement all that you have said. And there is continuity between the past, present, and the future. I will take only a few more minutes to thank our sponsors, the IMF, the ADBI, and the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the German foundation, who have been pillars of our support, not only this year, but in previous editions as well. And I can't thank them enough for the continued support they continue to provide us. They trust us, and I must say that trust is such a scarce commodity these days that it feels so good to have trusted partners like ADBI, like the IMF, and the CAS. There are several people in ICRIER that have worked very hard to put this conference together and to ensure the success of this conference. Tanu, Prateek, Manmeet, Neha, Kishan, Kavita and her team, Sharad, Rajkumar, Chaya, Ayush, Janardhan, and Preeti for managing various roles with skill and without fuss to ensure this conference has been a success. They have been exceptional, and considering this was, as I said, this was our first experience in organizing a 4-day event virtually, they did commendable, and it progressed without any glitches. It is a tribute to their commitment, dedication, and sincerity. I don't think anybody could have asked for a better team. And I thank all the speakers. We had eminent speakers, and I've named some of them, and we had speakers from abroad, we had speakers from India, we had chairs, we had moderators, and I can't thank them enough for the role that they have played in making this conference a success. And finally, I dedicate this conference to the memory of our former chairperson, Dr. Ishur Ahluwalia, who left us on the 26th of September last month. She will continue to inspire the work at ICRIER. Thank you all very much, and I hope you will get time to see the sessions on our portal at your leisure in the future. I thank you.